Hey guys, it's Lohpally here, and today we're going to be looking over the patch 12.8 and reconstructing a little bit of my tier list and kind of going over the things that I think will be happening for this, for this patch. So feel free to like, subscribe, and comment in the section below on what characters you like and maybe don't like coming out of this.
Warning, warning, warning.
So, first off, we'll look at kind of some champion buffs that have been patched on 12.8, which is the upcoming patch. Most important things really to note is that Vel'Koz is getting a little bit of buff. Not too many other crazy changes. And then Seraphine actually isn't going to get any of the nerfs, and neither is Aatrox. And so now we move into the nerfs, which are going to be on some targeted ADCs. So you can see that Jinx is going to be missing 50 health at level 1. That's actually pretty huge. Makes her a lot weaker in the early stages, more fragile, more brittle, etc. Right here, Soraka is getting what they consider... Oh, I see what happened. They just missed a number right here. So this should be 240. This isn't 140. So they're nerfing her AP ratio a little bit and nerfing her base heal a little bit. Yeah, it's a typo. I think that's why someone said that, like, oh, her base healing is going up. And also they're nerfing Xayah's Q damage again, so that she's not nearly as much of a poke character. And then they're also nerfing AP Kai'Sa on her damage health ratio down a pretty significant margin too. This also, combined with the fact that Ezreal Q is going to be on a pretty short cooldown in the early stages, means that the landscape of AD carries might change a little bit. Where right now we see a lot of Misfortune and Xayah, like lots of poke ADCs, so that's why the tier list kind of looks the way it does. But we're going to kind of reconstruct some of the tier list functionality. So for starters, I think with Ezreal buffs and some nerfs to more of the poke ADCs, I think Karma probably goes down a little bit in the down to the S tier. She still does really well with things like, the poke. So MF is still not nerfed. I didn't see any Eclipse nerfs at all either. So there will be still a lot of poke lanes oriented in that sense. So Karma will stay, S tier because she's just really good with poke lanes. That's also why we see things like Xerath and Vel'Koz in this tier list really, really high for me, is that I think that poke ADCs are really strong, and when you have a poke ADC and a poke support, they're really good together. Next is that Soraka nerfs. Pretty big Soraka nerfs, so we're going to move her down to A tier. Plus, I also think she does bad into other poke lanes, because if she can't walk up and Q, she struggles a lot with this kind of harass. This also means that other characters that struggle against poke, so I would say, a champion like Janna, for example, is going to go down in my tier list a little bit too. Characters that are actually going to bump up, though, are characters that do well into poke, or, all like characters that have lots of flexibility. So for starters, Nautilus. Nautilus and Pyke are both incredibly good at actually dealing with the majority of poke characters. Just because of the fact that they either have really good engage form tools with I call it non-committal, because if you miss the hook, then you're not in and you're not killing yourself, and it's relatively easy to hit. Pyke is really good at dealing with poke because of his passive, and Nautilus has his shield. So there's a lot of ways for them to mitigate a lot of poke power, and they're strong at level 1, which is really important, by the way. Being strong at level 1 means that you don't get pushed in and stuck under your turret and harass a lot, which is kind of my biggest problem with currently things like Leona, where I think Leona is still a pretty good character, but because she forfeits a lot of the level 1 pressure, I don't like her as much. Also, because there's going to be a lot of poke in lanes, this makes characters like Zyra and Brand go down in power a lot, just because of the fact that I think that if you're against a lot of poke-oriented characters, neither of these characters do that well. And I think Ezreal is going to probably start rising to the top, where I think that Ezreal will probably be like a pretty premier pick again. I think a lot of people will like him again because the hyper carries are getting nerfed a bit, as we saw like from the Jinx base HP and Xayah getting nerfed a bit. So I think Ezreal will probably come back as a really strong competitor, and that's why we'll be leaving things like Yuumi and Karma up here. So next we're going to be moving Lulu down a little bit. Lulu's been a pretty OP character, in my opinion, for a really long time, but the game's been going away from as much hard engage and all in, and more for poke-oriented characters, and I think that Lulu does really bad against poke. She doesn't really have any great ways to all in. She kind of runs into the same problems as Janna, but she has a better scaling functionality than a champion like Janna, so that's why I keep her still in the A tier. Outside of that, I think that Senna is still going to be a really good character just because of the fact that she has lots of builds she can go. She can go Eclipse, Divine Sunderer, full tank. I've done Moonstone on her too. People have still done the Locket build, so her flexibility is why I still keep her in the S tier. And Yumi does really well against Poke too, so even if she doesn't have a lot of individual agency, she does really well against Poke. Next, kind of one character I want you to keep your eyes out for, though, is Nami. I think Nami has a lot of potential to be a S tier support. I think that the problem I have with her right now is currently she's hard to hit like a lot of her skill shots and get a lot of value out of her. So she'll still remain A tier, even though I think she's a really potential S tier character if you play her well. So Nami is like between my A tier and S tier right now. I think she is pretty close, and I think if you play her really well, she's really, really good. Also, I'm going to be moving Thresh down to B tier, just because there is so much poke, and when Thresh is pushed under the turret and poked a lot, he just struggles too much. It's just a really problematic scenario for him to deal with, and I'm not a fan of it. Most of the B tiers stay the same. I think actually Bard, though, for me, is more of an A tier than he was previously. It's actually funny, because Bard isn't really like a good laning character, but he is a good mitigating character. And what I mean by that is you can put 2 to 3 points in your W in the early stages and mitigate a lot of poke and lane. Somehow this character that's really more of a roaming style support is actually pretty decent at dealing with being poked. And so because of that, I think that Bard goes up in priority a little bit. I think this character is still problematically skill capped, where the character is incredibly hard to play if you don't play him well. But if you play him well, this character will be a bit better than before. I move him a little bit into the A tier. The Swain changes. Oh, wait. See previous list on things. No, Swain is not on the list. Or, Swain is on the list. So I don't know if the Swain is getting changed. If Swain is changed, by the way, and can tug off of teammates, I don't think that changes him at all for support. Just because I think if your teammate hits a CC, you should be able to root off of it pretty reasonably well. So I think that he'll just stay as like a B tier anyway. So all the characters like above here, A tier or above, I think are really good. I'm sure people have questions about like maybe Malachi. I think Malachi is really, really strong right now just because dragons are still really important. And I think people are playing more and more squishier characters in a lot of games. So in games where people are playing a lot of squishy characters, it doesn't mean that they have no tanks, just that they have a lot of squishy characters. It becomes really easy to navigate the game because your saplings do so much damage to everyone except for like maybe the Udyr in the game. So I think Malachi has a lot of potential. Plus, I think you can build him full tank right now, and he is actually a pretty good frontliner. I've been playing around with a lot of frontline characters, and with Legends Tenacity Triumph and like Iceborne Gauntlet, Ninja Tabby into Frozen Heart, it's felt really, really good. I think Tarek can probably go up into C tier now. I still don't think he's really that great just because I think his stun is too easy to dodge and it's too hard to coordinate with your ulti. I think this character is capped a lot by organizational problems. I don't think necessarily it runs into those other things. And then also Rel is back into B tier just because I think Rel can do well against poke characters if you're not afraid to flash and navigate the lanes well. And if you do take people's flashes, she does an exceptional job of punishing no flashes, especially with Hextech Flash and like Lucidity Boots. So I think she goes into my B tier now. I think Rel's a little bit better than she originally was. Braum still stands here though. Most of these premises, by the way, are built on what 80 carries I think are good, which is I think a lot of poke characters are going to be really strong. So this is why like the tier list looks the way it is, where okay, what characters do reasonably well into poke and have tools to deal with poke. So that's why like most of the A pluses are the way they are. So that's kind of like to kind of give you better context on what characters I think. Anything that's C or under, I don't even know why it's on my list. It's just chat asking for stuff. Yeah, like half the champs are B tier, aka like you could play them, and if you specially pick them into certain circumstances, or you play them really, really well, they're still okay. Like you can still win games on it, but if you're playing anything at the A tier or above, you're probably gonna see a lot better results. They're gonna feel a lot more powerful. I think they're gonna do well with the characters that they play with and against the characters that they play with for sure. Yeah, hook characters are starting to feel really, really OP again, especially Nautilus and Pike. So keep your eyes out for those kind of characters. And yeah, that pretty much ends it. I think that Poke will be still relatively prevalent, just in different forms rather than just Eclipse. I think Ezreal will probably come back, and I think when Ezreal starts being played a bit more, I think that other characters will come out too. And I think also the Jinx nerfs are reasonably solid. I think that hitting her and making her more fragile will make her die more in all ins. So she'll definitely even struggle against champions like Nautilus. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment in the section below. Hit that bell and whistle. Really appreciate all the support. Hopefully you enjoyed this tier list. And I'll see you next time. Peace.